Well, good morning, and thank you for watching today. This is our second training in a series of 4 on Lutheran Service Builder, and today's topic is on bulletins and bulletin formats. Let me first introduce myself. I'm Tim Burke, software support technician here at Concordia Technology Solutions. Been here around 10 years. And with me today on the back end, off camera, is my manager, Rod Kiles, and he'll be sitting in answering questions that some of you might ask throughout the presentation. Our training series this year, we do it every year, is a total of 4 sessions. We cover service planning and global search in the first training session. The second one, we cover bulletins and bulletin formats, creating those inserts. 3 is for presentations, and that's speaking of PowerPoint presentations and presentation formats. That also includes Media Shout 6. And then finally, we wrap up the 4-day series with My Worship Resources. That's the custom area of the program, and other add-on subscriptions that you can choose if you'd like to subscribe to. But today our focus is on bulletins and bulletin formats. Let's go through a couple housekeeping items that we want to cover. I'm going to allow for 50 minutes for presentation of this particular training. This one is our I guess most attended and most wanted, and so there's a lot of material to cover. I'm imagining that presentation could go the full 60 minutes, so we'll just have to see how what time permits there. I like to allow for some time at the end for questions. Again, we'll just see how far we get along in the presentation. During the presentation, all attendees are muted, so we don't have crosstalk and we can get through the information smoothly. But I do want you to go ahead and ask questions throughout the presentation, and that will put my manager, Rod, to work, and he'll be able to answer some of those questions as we go through the slides in the different areas. And then just as a reminder, the recording will be shared afterwards. We'll have it up in our resource center, and I believe you'll also be sent probably a link to the recording. So for those of you who may not have been able to actually attend live here, but you did register for the session, you will get a link for that. All right, our training goal today is by the end of today, you will know how to prepare a complete service folder and export it from the Lutheran Service Builder application. Our outline, some of the things that we'll be covering are insert and being able to select and remove elements from our order of service, change how elements appear in the order of service, save custom liturgies so that we can use them then in the future. Customize bulletin formats, kind of give some styling to the way it is presented in your bulletin. And then export that bulletin out to Microsoft Word. All right, let's go ahead then and get started. Let me bring up Lutheran Service Builder. All right, so let's see. Looks good. Okay, so here we are in the calendar view. That's where we spent a portion of our time yesterday, and I've already signed into the program, and I can tell that simply by looking or clicking on the gear in the upper right corner, and it will then display my name and the email address that I'm using to sign into the program. Today from this menu, we'll also be touching on bulletin formats on the second half of the presentation. All right, so let's go ahead and recap just a little bit of what we covered yesterday. We are working on a service here on June 22nd, this coming Sunday, the second Sunday after Pentecost. we talked about how we can always get back to this view with the little cross symbol in the upper left corner, and the global search option there in the upper right corner of the magnifying glass, where you can also search for individual elements and copy them right from that global search to paste into possibly a bulletin that you already have saved in Microsoft Word. But today we'll be working on building a bulletin from scratch. Let's go ahead then and click on our service. I'm going to click right on the text here on June 22nd, and that opens up this service plan view. We talked about that, spent some time yesterday pulling together all of the resources that we hope to use or that we might use during this service. Once we're in this service plan view, we pulled, or actually the application gives us the readings from the lectionary, but we can choose to add additional readings if we'd like. We also chose a number of hymns that we would use in the service. They're not in any particular order right now. We're just bringing the resources together in this service plan this service plan view. Here under the order of service, we chose Divine Service Setting 3, and we also chose to add an additional rite of Holy Baptism. I think for this Holy Baptism, I'm going to remove it for the time being. We'll add it again in just a little bit after we've gone through the order of service. Below the additional rite, well, let me click on Holy Baptism, and I'm going to use the little X here on the left side that will remove that rite from the service for the moment. Then we talked about setting the usage, how many times that we'll be using this order of service on a given weekend. And then we also talked about having a few notes here that any number of your staff can leave in this section here under notes to communicate things to other staff members as you're collaborating on the services themselves. And then there are a couple options down here at the bottom, being able to change the name, date, holiday, or making a copy of this service. So what I like to look at or think of this as the steps you go through. Yesterday also we looked at the propers for Pentecost 2 first, and then next we went to the service plan. That's where we are today. So those are like the first two steps that you might go through in planning your services, and then also preparing your bulletins, PowerPoints, playlists, etc. So after these first two steps, then we move up to the upper right corner and we click on Prepare Bulletin. That's where we're going today. You can see in the menu there's also an option for preparing the presentation, the PowerPoint, and then preparing a playlist if you have that subscription. We'll talk about that on the fourth session. Well, let's go ahead and click on Prepare Bulletin. So in this view, what we have is the order of service. Let me just scroll through it. I'm going to use the scroll bar on the far right, and I'm going to quickly go through it just to show you how lengthy this order of service is. We're continuing to go down the service past communion, and we finally get to the end here where the acknowledgments are shown. And so this particular view, Prepare Bulletin view, is in a continuous format. There are no page breaks. You don't set pages here. It's just in one long continuous line from top to bottom, and it's in Microsoft Word after we have exported the document that the pages then are set, and you can work with pages at that point in time. That's a question we sometimes get, and so pages aren't referred to here in the application itself. At the top, let's talk about the menu bar here in blue. The cross we've already talked about. That takes us to the calendar view, back to that like landing page. Next to that is redo buttons, options there that you can undo and redo a change that you've made. Next to that is actually the tab we're currently viewing. That's the document tab. Next to that is an option of inserting additional elements into the order of service. We'll be using that today. And then here in the upper right corner is now an option that kind of brings up those 5 options that we go through from top to bottom. So here, we talked about seeing the propers, and then the service plan, and now we're in prepare bulletin, and then you may or may not use the additional 2 items on the menu, depending on if you use PowerPoint presentations or subscribe to playlists. So that all is available in the upper right corner, a quick menu where you can work your way through this particular order of service or this church service weekend or holiday on the calendar. So we're in the prepare bulletin view. That's the top navigation bar, that blue bar. Now let's talk about the navigation that's right underneath that blue bar. And it can have, and I call this the toolbar, it can have a number of different tools depending on what tab you have open. So right now we see the toolbar for the document tab in the upper left corner. Those tools are the ability to export this order of service. When you click on the button, you have .docx for Microsoft Word, .rtf for rich text format, and .html for a web type of export of this service. Next to that on the toolbar is the bulletin format that is currently selected for styling of this order of service. We'll be talking about that. You've got a little drop down arrow here where you can select from a number of formats, and then you've also got a edit button to the right of that you can edit then the bulletin format that's currently selected. Let me click on that drop down menu. So most of you should have the default bulletin format and the large print bulletin format. Those are the main 2 that come with the application. If you have subscribed to Creative Worship or the One and All Rejoice hymnal, then you would get an additional 2 kind of default formats that can be used. And then I've also created a couple custom formats of all captions, and then a format for the full setting of the music. So those 2, I've done myself, and so you wouldn't see those on yours unless you create your own in that way. But default is the one that's currently selected for this order of service. Next to that then is the order of service that we had in our service plan, so Divine Service Setting 3. At this point then, if you've chosen Divine Service Setting 3 and then suddenly realized Pastor wanted to use one of the other divine services instead, you can still change that order of service right from this window and click on the drop-down list, and then you can scroll through all of those orders of service that we saw yesterday during the service plan session. And so at the top, you've got your Divine Services settings 1 through 5, and then the daily office, other services, just as we saw yesterday. If you continue to go down, there's Holy Baptism service, marriage service. So there's a lot of different orders of service that you can choose from. And then next to that order of service, let's box it in here, is then a save button as well. So after we go through this order of service on the lower part of the screen and we make some tweaks, we change it up a little bit the way that we maybe would like to do it at our church on a weekly basis, then once we're done tweaking it, we can come up here to the top, click that save button, and it saves this order of service as a custom order of service that we can use going forward. And then next to that is a web view option. And so I hope that I can get to that today. It's a little bit of a fun demonstration to use the web view option. And so if you that are watching or even watching this video at a later point in time, if you have a mobile phone handy, your cell phone, just have it ready. We're going to go to using a QR code at one point. And so you might have your camera app available, or maybe you have a QR code reader on your phone. That's what we're going to use for this web view option. All right, so we've talked about the top blue bar menu and the toolbar underneath, at least for the Documents tab. If I click on Insert right next to the Document tab, then we would have another toolbar that is specific for inserting different elements into the service. You can click on any one of these buttons that you would like to use to insert. If I had a rubric, which are those directional type of notices here, like stand, that is a rubric. So if I wanted to add another rubric, I would click on the rubric button, and then as I hover over this service, you can see a blue line appear depending on where my cursor is at, and that's the insert point of whatever it is that I've clicked on at the top. So if I wanted to put a rubric here at the top, I could then click right on the blue line, and it would give me a rubric line where I could type in whatever I would want for that rubric. And you'll notice that once I've put another element or clicked on the element in the order of service here, then a new tab appears at the top for what I've clicked on below, and then that displays the toolbar for that inserted element. And so this rubric, I'm just going to go ahead and delete it. I'll click on the delete button on the toolbar, and it removes that rubric, and we're back here at the Document tab. So let's now proceed to go through this order of service, kind of element by element, and talk about what each element is that we're seeing on the page. So coming down here, just hovering my cursor over confession and absolution, this is considered a heading, and it is a little bit of a larger font. And if we click on the heading, then we'll see the heading tab appear, as well as the two options that are available. We have delete, which is pretty self-explanatory, and we also have move. Let me show you what the move button does, because we'll see this pretty much on every tab that opens at the top. So move, if I click on that button, it will then turn my cursor into being able to insert or move what I've clicked on to a new spot. So let's go down to an insert point right above kneel stand. I'll click right here, and you can see that it moved the heading of confession and absolution down right above kneel stand. So I'll go ahead and we'll click on confession and absolution again. I'll click on move another time, and we'll put the insert point back at the top of the order of service where it belongs. So that's the move button. Underneath that is the hymn of invocation. So the program knows that this is a placeholder for a hymn. So as soon as I click on this, then you'll notice on the right side a search panel shows, and it knows that we're wanting to place a hymn in that position in the order of service. And if you're using the service plan that we talked about yesterday, those hymns that we pre-selected that we would use in this service are at the top of this, the search panel results there on the right side. And so we can place one of our hymns right there in that spot just simply by clicking on the hymn. I'll go to God's Own Child, I Gladly Say It, hymn 594. All I need to do is click on it, and it will then move that hymn right into the place where the hymn placeholder was. And so right now here in the view, we've got a hymn 594, the text. And since that's been placed there and the blue box is around this particular element, that tab then appears. You know, we're looking at the hymn of invocation, and then the toolbar for hymns appears right underneath that. So let's once again go through these options. The caption button is currently gray, and so that means that we're viewing the caption. If I clicked on that button, it will that button there, it will remove the caption. Let me click on it, and then you'll have a hymn without a caption. So that's the purpose of that button. And next to that is three buttons here in succession. You can choose to show the hymn text, the hymn melody, or none of the hymn. Maybe you just want the caption of the hymn there, and then you have your congregation sing from the hymnal, your pew edition of the Lutheran Service Book. So then you would select none. So let's just quickly go through those options. Right now, text is showing. Melody automatically puts the melody there in the order of service. Excuse me. None will take away text and melody and simply give us a caption there. Let's go back to, let's just go back, or let's select melody. Yeah, there we go. And then next to that is stanzas. This is our stanza selector. So click on the button. By default, it will have all stanzas selected. You can uncheck any stanzas that you might not sing. You also have the options of selecting all here by clicking on that text at the bottom, or selecting none and then choosing just the verses that you want to sing. So what I'll do is I'll remove all check marks and then say I'm going to sing in our church stanzas 1 and let's say stanza 2, and that's it. And so I can click on the button to collapse the menu, and now we see the presentation of that hymn with stanzas 1 and 2 only. Next to that is the move button, which we've already talked about. We could move the hymn to another spot, or we can just delete the hymn altogether. Let's move on. Oh, and I should say the sub caption here is shown, and it's automatically bringing stanzas 1 to 2, just to communicate that in your service bulletin. Let's go down the order of service. Next, we have a stand. It's a rubric. And once I click on it, then the tab opens for rubric with its tools. And also know that you can change the wording of these rubrics. If stand is not really what you want, you could place your cursor in front and you could put please stand if you would like. And then underneath that is another rubric. The sign of the cross may be made by all. And that was when I had baptism. I think as part of the service, we'll come back to the baptism option near the end. And then clicking on the next element, once I click on it here, let's see, this is all part of the confession and absolution, that's right. And so we can click on each of these, and at the top, as you click on these, this is the exhortation in this case, the tab opens. We've got any caption, if you want the caption, text or none. You can edit this element. We'll do that on the 4th training session. We'll go through custom edits. But here, if you wanted to include the caption, you could do that, and it will say exhortation. Here for the invocation, we can include the caption. And so at times, by default, some of them are set to normally, I guess, what a church would set up for their bulletin, but you can always click the caption on, off, the text on, off, etc. Let's go down. We've got a couple of the rubrics here. Here is, clicking on that is the confession of sins. And so when you click on that element, we get the toolbar and the tab here at the top that's specific for confession of sins. And also on the search panel on the right, we see that the confession of sins is selected, but it does give us other options here that you can choose from to replace the confession of sins from setting 3. So you have all of the different settings and a scrollable list where you could click on any of those options if you wanted to kind of move away from the default. Underneath the confession of sins, clicking on the second part there is the absolution with some of the same options here. We could put the caption, I guess, on each of those if we wanted. And then do want to point out, this is the first element here in the service where a blue line appears on the left side. What that indicates is that there is an option for this, and a lot of times in Lutheran Service Book you will see a left side and a right side as options. So that's what will appear here. All we need to do is click on this solid blue line or the little triangle here at the top, and it will then expand and show the 2 options. So it's like the left side, the right side. If you wanted to do this particular option of the confession and absolution, just click on it here. You know, the separator line is kind of separating the two, and then that would take the place of the other one, or click on the blue line again and go back to the default confession of sins and absolution. Another rubric of stand, we could, once again, this will be the last one that I do, where we just kind of put the please in front of it. Service of the word is a heading. It's a larger font. We come down to the introit and click on that element, and it opens up the tab at the top for the introit. Shows us in the search panel the introit that is currently selected from Proper 7C, with options to go to other suggestions if you wanted to move away from that introit and use something else. It does have a options bar here on the left. Let's go ahead and click on that and see our options. We could do the psalm instead, or another entrance hymn as an option. So any of those three from that options group. We'll stay with introit. With the introit selected, let's cover some of those tools on the toolbar at the top. We see the tab. Make sure that that's the element that you're wanting to edit or make some changes to. We've got the caption, we've got the text or none. And then this is one we haven't talked about yet, pointing. So pointing refers to the little red lines and the asterisk, and that's for chanting. So if you have chanting or do chanting in your church, you'd want those the pointing there in the introit. If you don't, then just simply click the button so that pointing is turned off, and then the red lines and asterisks are removed from the introit. Let's go ahead and leave them in at the moment. Next to that is the psalm tone. So if you are chanting, there is usually a psalm tone. So you click on the drop-down menu, and then we've got psalm tones, I guess, here we got A through K. And so you would probably find out from your music director or organist what psalm tone you want to use. Let's just use D today. And so clicking on that will place the psalm tone at the top of the introit in your order of service. Next to that is an option for a template. I won't use that for the introit today, but we're going to use that option when we look at the readings in just a little bit. Then there is an option for editing to customize this particular element, which we'll talk about again in session 4. And then the buttons move and delete that we've already seen demonstrated. Let's go down the page here to the Kyrie, click on the Kyrie, and the tab appears at the top. We're looking at the Kyrie, and we've got a number of new buttons to kind of talk about here for the Kyrie. Caption text, we've already talked about, but then we have now for this element, we also have the option of adding melody or setting. Melody is simply the melody that would be sung for the Kyrie. So that adds the single note melody there to the Kyrie. If you, since we're using Divine Service Setting 3, that's the one setting where we also have the 4-part harmony. So that's what we're talking about with the setting button here at the top. I'll go ahead and click on that. And that gives us the harmony here of soprano, alto, tenor, bass on the musical staff there. Soprano, alto, tenor, bass. And that is only provided for the liturgy. We do not have settings for hymns. That is often asked about in our support channel. But the engravings for hymns have just been done up for melody. But the Divine Service Setting 3 has been done with 4-part if you desire. Let's just keep it with melody. And then there's the button for none, edit, move, and delete. Let's continue on with Gloria in Excelsis. Clicking on that will show the panel on the right where Gloria is selected with options underneath that. And then here on the toolbar for the Gloria, besides melody and setting, now we have another 2 options here. For this element, of text setting and text melody. So we talked about pointing a little bit earlier in the introit. The chanting can be done by pastor if we put in, let's go with text melody first. If pastor is one who maybe doesn't feel comfortable chanting and singing the glory be to God on high here in the Gloria, then what you can do is, and well, let me put the melody on here first, and that shows right here that pastor would be singing, chanting this glory be to God on high, that section. But if pastor isn't one who likes to sing solo there, you can go to text melody, and what that does is puts text there for pastor and melody then for the congregation to respond. So that's where we get the text melody label for the button. The other one is text setting. So it's basically the same thing we see below, but instead of the simple melody, it will put your 4 parts there on the music staff, as I mentioned earlier, for Divine Service Setting 3. So all of those options are there that you can select from for the Gloria. And we'll just stick, I think, with, let's go with text melody. Going farther down is the salutation and collect of the day. There is a template there. We're going to talk about that, the templates here in just a moment, but so I'll be referring to that option here. Sit, we could do please sit here. This is another rubric when you click on it. Now we get to the Old Testament reading. I'll click on that, and then the tab appears at the top, and then this is our toolbar for the reading here. And most of these buttons we've already seen demonstrated, but I do want to use the template here. So the template, what it's talking about is for the readings, you've got all the content that comes in for the reading from the lectionary that we're using. And then at the end is a response. And so that's all part of the template. There's content, and then there's a response. Some of the templates also include an introductory response to the reading. So let's click on this drop-down menu for templates. Anytime the word content shows, it just means it's going to bring the content in from the lectionary. So the standard response, which is currently selected, it's the content of the reading, and then the response, this is the word of the Lord, thanks be to God. We can go down the list. We'd see a Gloria Patri template, a daily office response right here, and then we get to the Old Testament with introduction. So it's the template that it's showing us would have the Old Testament reading is from, and then the content, and then the response following that. So I'm going to select that one, and now you can see that that introductory has been made there and displayed as part of the element. The content is there, and then the response at the bottom. So that's what we mean by templates here at the top from that drop down. Let's go to the psalm. The psalm, we can choose to have pointing or not. We can choose the psalm tone. Let's see, I think we used, what was it, D before? Put D there again. We're not going to worry about a template here. There is a blue line on the left side, so let's see what our option is. The option then is to do the gradual instead. So you could click on that, and the gradual then would be placed in your order of service, or we'll just go back to using the psalm. Then we come down to the epistle. We'll click on the epistle, and let's go ahead then and add a different template than the standard response for the epistle. So I'll click on the drop down. We'll scroll down here through the same templates we saw earlier, and then there is one here for the epistle with introduction. So I'll click on that, and that adds the introduction as well as the response there. Content is here, kind of in the middle. The subcaption here as well is shown in italics on the far right. We got another rubric here, and then we've got the Alleluia with options. We'll expand that briefly. So then there's the Alleluia there and the verse of the day. There is a tract. There's a little red triangle. You can hover over the triangle to see what that is communicating to you, that the tract is usually omitted during the Pentecost season. So we'll just stick with the default of what's suggested. Then we get down to the Holy Gospel. That already has a kind of a template already applied to it with an introduction and a response at the end. And you'll also notice in these readings that, at least at the moment, by default, the verse numbers are there throughout. I'll just point to a few verse numbers. And so verse numbers are referred to. You can take, or I should say, you can remove the verse numbers from the presentation in bulletin formats. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But that is able to be edited. Let's go ahead and bring in a new idea here. I'm going to insert another element between the Gospel and the Nicene Creed. So I'm going to click on the tab at the top, Insert. It's always up there at the top to be able to insert another heading, caption, another hymn, another reading, prayer, proper, a custom element, or even a rite in the service. We're going to choose a caption. So I'm going to click on Caption and then bring my insert point, my cursor right above the Nicene Creed, below the Gospel, and it puts a new caption on the screen. I'll backspace over what's there, and we'll just put in a children's message. And I could also include, a title for that children's message if I wanted, right there on the screen. I guess it's maybe looking for the apostrophe there. And then we come down to the Nicene Creed. Clicking on that, it will show us the toolbar at the top for the Nicene Creed. It gives us a blue bar on the left to see options. I've just clicked on it. We'll scroll down to see the other options. Apostles' Creed and the Athanasian Creed. We'll stick with the Nicene Creed. We've got another rubric here for sit, and then we've got a placeholder for the hymn of the day. We'll click on that. Then on our search panel on the right, it then shows hymns, and just review here. We've got our hymns that were from our service plan. I believe the very first hymn I selected was the hymn of the day, 825. So we'll click on that one, place it right where it belongs. We'll add melody on the toolbar at the top. We'll sing stanzas 1 and 4 this time. Then we'll scroll down. We'll go to the sermon caption, and again, you can add a sermon title here. And underneath that, we've got the votum, another rubric, offertory. The offertory does have melody and setting options. Let's just go with melody. Create in me clean heart. Scrolling down a little farther, another rubric. I won't click on it. Offering. That's just a caption. Another rubric. Then we've got the prayer of the church. Now, if you were part of our session yesterday, we talked about, and I'm going to go there real quick here, settings, account settings, scrolling down to content subscriptions. I talked about adding a couple content subscriptions here. There are two, One and All Rejoice and Creative Worship, that are an additional subscription cost to adding them, but the Let Us Pray option here is a free one. So you can come to content subscriptions, put a check mark to activate these two items, and you'll notice here that it will take the prayer of the church and include it automatically in your worship service. So we'll close that account setting, and that's what we're seeing here. This is the prayer of the church for this particular week from the LCMS, and it's integrated right here into the service for us. Convenience. Next, we get to service of the sacrament, a heading, the preface, We can click here on the proper preface here and the option, so you can abbreviate it here. You don't have to have the whole thing printed out of what pastor is reading from. Got the Sanctus. We'll add melody there. We've got the Lord's Prayer next, and in this case, it is melody setting, and then we've got the ability to do that optional text and setting, or text and melody, if the pastor is not going to be singing. So in this case, pastor would speak most of the Lord's Prayer, and the congregation would respond with melody. The words of the Lord, I won't go through all of these. You're starting to see the similarities, and we've demonstrated all of the buttons on the toolbar. The Agnus Dei, let's add melody. We've got distribution portions here. We've got another placeholder for a hymn, so let's bring in a couple other hymns. Hymn 333 is now set. Let's add melody in the upper on the toolbar. Select stanzas, so let's just say 1 and 3 for variation. Then we have another distribution hymn. After that, we'll add in 604. We'll put melody in. This one happens to have the Trinitarian symbol on stanza 5, so we'll do that. Let's just sing all stanzas here for hymn 604. Got a rubric. Can add melody. Thanksgiving has other melody options. The benediction, hymn to depart. I don't think I only selected 4 hymns, so let's drop down. Here we have our service plan, and I can search for any hymn specifically up here, or I can also review some of the other hymns based on the readings for this day. So let's just go with Amazing Grace down here. Puts Amazing Grace in the end. We'll sing all of those verses. So let's add melody. And then finally at the end, we need to have the acknowledgments for copyright purposes. So that's down there fixed to the bottom of your order of service. So we've got this order of service now. We've added an element or two. We've changed how they appear in the order of service. I'm just scrolling up. Let me click off to the side to kind of remove the search results on the right side. Scrolling up to the top, and let's say that now that we've tweaked it, the way that we usually use or want to do our services, we can click the Save button here at the top in this little section here of order of service. Remember, this is a Divine Service setting 3, but I've gone through and now I've tweaked it the way I want, or that our church does it. And what it does here, just by default, is it gives a name, a custom name, and it just puts the word "my" in front of it to change it. Excuse me. From the original text there of Divine Service Setting 3. You can just change this whole setting here, and let's say, let's say my church was named Zion, so I could put Zion's DS3 modified, and that way you could then, from this point on, use this order of service that we've now labeled Zion's DS3 modified, and you won't have to make all of those changes week after week that we just did. It holds all of the changes that we made, and not the hymn selections, though. Keep that in mind. Every week is a different set of hymns, but it does save all of the changes that we made in the order of service. Let's see. Now let's do something real quick here. Let's go back to the service plan. And I'm going to add the rite of baptism. I'm going to just go up to the top and type in BAP, choose Holy Baptism. That puts that here as, let me get my arrow. Come on, arrow. Maybe there it is. That puts the Holy Baptism there as an additional rite. I'm going to add another rite. I mean, you would probably not have confirmation here, but I just want to show what that will look like in the service as an additional rite in your order of service. So I've added these 2 rites to the service plan. Let's go back to prepare bulletin. And now that we've added those rites, by default, it's suggesting that baptism goes here at the beginning of the service. And if you choose to put it there, you can click on the Insert Rite button. What you'll notice then too, underneath the confession and absolution kind of has a pink background to it. Let me scroll down the page a little bit, and then that pink ends right here after the confession and absolution. So what is then normally expected when you insert the rite of baptism is that that confession of absolution gets removed, therefore it's pink, and gets replaced with the rite of holy baptism. So let's go ahead and click, well, let's note here what's right underneath the pink, the service of the word, just so we can confirm that this area gets removed. I'm going to insert the rite with the green button, and then you'll notice the heading right underneath is service of the word. So the previous section was removed, but you'll notice here that holy baptism is shown, and I've just clicked on it to change the toolbar to the right, because right now we don't see any of the dialogue that happens during holy baptism. So if you would like to have the dialogue, then you need to click the button here for contents. So once I click that button, then the dialogue of during the rite of holy baptism is also put in your order of service as well. And we'll go down the line here. And I should say that the whole rite of holy baptism is kind of represented with this small or thin gray line going down the page. Let's keep our eye on that gray line as we go down, because there will be a point here where it breaks, and that would be the end of baptism. And also, while we're going through this, you can click on any of these elements in baptism, and you could actually right click on the element and choose to delete part of this, just go element by element if you wanted to delete portions of it. So that's an option. But right here is where the gray line ends, and then that's where the order of service continues with the service of the word after that. So let's continue to scroll down the order of service kind of fast here, because I want to get to our other rite here of confirmation. So here is the rite of confirmation with its insert button. Confirmation is shown, and then immediately following that is the prayer of the church. But we don't have any of that, or we haven't placed the confirmation rite there yet. So let's do that. Insert rite. So now the rite is placed here, but there is no dialogue. So let's go ahead and I've already clicked on the line here for confirmation. So just as you would expect, there is a contents button there in the upper left. Click on the button, and that adds in all of the dialogue for the rite of confirmation. Again, with a gray line on the left side, and which ends right there, right above the prayer of the church. So those are just ways of including rites in your order of service, and it puts all of that content in there for you, which makes creating this order of service real quick and efficient. Now let's go to the very top. I'm going to click on the document tab and get the document toolbar. So let's go to this web view option. I'm going to click on web view. I'm going to enable the web view by clicking on the blue button. And what this does is it creates a URL, and I'm going to want to copy this URL. I'm highlighting it and then copying this. This would be a URL that you could put on your church's website specifically for a weekend service, and then people who might be streaming the service from home can click on the link, and they'd be able to see it right there on their computer, or if they're watching on their phone, they could see it on their phone. In this case, what I want to show is I'm just going to go up to a tab that I already have selected. It is a free QR code generator online. It's The URL is up here at the top. It's just qr-code-generator.org. It's just a free service. I come here to the URL field. The link is already selected there by default, and I just paste that URL that we got from Lutheran Service Builder, and it pastes it in. It's creating the QR code here on the right. I'll click Save, and I'm going to select, I think maybe, I don't know if I have to select PNG here, the first one or not. I'm going to go ahead and do that. I clicked on PNG, that's just an image file, and it downloaded it to my computer here in the upper right corner. It's showing. I'm going to click on that. Now get your phones ready. I'm going to bring that QR code that was downloaded here over to our session. There's the QR code. So go ahead, if you've got your phone handy, open up the camera app or a QR code reader. And right now, while we're going through this, go ahead and click on the link that shows up in your camera app. And what that should display then is the order of service that we just put together. It will have the baptism rite, the confirmation rite that we just added near the end. And that gives you an example of how people can then just have the order of service right there on their mobile device and scroll through the service as the service happens. They could do that during the service in church. If they've even attended, you could display this QR code on the screens that you have, or put it in your bulletin if you would like. I'm just giving you some kind of creative ideas in ways of using the order of service if you want to get a little bit more technical with it. I'm going to go ahead and yeah, you're welcome, Lisa. Just noticed that she was thanking us for showing that. Let's go ahead back to Lutheran Service Builder here, and now we need to talk about formats in our remaining time. So we've got the order of service put together here, all in one continuous form. Now we want to style it up for our for exporting. And right out of the box, the default bulletin format is what we see. That might be just fine, and you could go to the export button here, make sure that you are in the document tab, and export it to Microsoft Word. In fact, let me click on that real quick. We'll export it to Microsoft Word, and I hopefully should get that appearing on one of my screens here. Oh, there it was. Let's see, it showed up here at the top. It's downloaded. Where is it? It's still working. Now let me grab it and pull it over here. All right. So here it is in Microsoft Word. We have got Holy Baptism here at the top that we added. And we may want to do some things here with the service in the bulletin format. To edit that format, you can simply click on Edit right next to the bulletin format selector here in our order of service, or you can also click on the gear in the upper right corner, and it will take you to, if you click on bulletin formats, it will take you there as well. I'm going to click on the edit button here within the order of service, which is what you would most likely use. It then immediately takes us to bulletin formats, and it puts a little menu here of those bulletin formats, which I have so far here on the left. Now, I can create a number of different bulletin formats and just really make this list longer, even scrollable. To create a new bulletin format from the ones that you have displayed, you can simply click on the button here in the bottom, New Format, and it will allow you to create a new format based on one of the four. You would most often see the first two mainly, unless you have the subscription for the other two items. But we can create a new bulletin format off of default. It will put a new listing here, and let's name this Tim's webinar format. And so Tim's webinar format appears here on the left. It's at the moment the same thing as default because that's what I based it off of. So these two are identical. It does put a little dot in front of it, which means that there's been a change made, a new format, and so that dot means that it needs to be saved. The save button is in the lower right corner, and that dot will then disappear. So I'll click on save, and the dot should disappear here momentarily. Let me click on it again. There we go. So now it's been saved, the dot disappears, and that dot will appear throughout as you're making changes, hopefully reminding you to make sure to click change after you've made a change. All right, so here in the bulletin format, we've got 3 tabs here at the top: style in the upper right, style, layout, and content. We're going to go through these in quick fashion here. I know I'm going to go over a little bit on the hour. I apologize if you have to go and you've got other things to do at the top of the hour. Please feel free to do so. We're going to continue recording, and you'll be able to pick up from here in the recording. But there's just a little bit more content to cover, and I appreciate your patience if you can give me that extra time. So up at the top right corner, style, layout, content are all ways we can add some styling to our bulletin format here, the new one that we're creating. What we have here in the middle is not the service that we're working on. This is just a short little sampling of service elements, and I'm going to use the scroll bar here on the right, just real short, and it is showing an example of everything that you could change in the order of service from a global standpoint. So over here, let's go through style first, which is selected just by default. There's a couple sections here. Well, let's see, let's remove that. And let's put a box around this. So section is talking about what part of the order of service you want to change. Options are the body, which is kind of referring to paragraphs, things in the body of the order of service. The heading, we've talked about headings, that is referring to that portion in a service plan. The captions, which are the little bold but smaller font here, those are all captions. Clicking on a subcaption, that is referring to putting the size of the font there for subcaptions. Rubrics, we've already talked about as being italics, and they appear in the service. There's an example of that. And then finally, the copyright, which is referring to the lettering there, the copyright information at the end of a hymn, and that's why for the copyright section, that character font is only 5 point in size. So as you kind of go through these 6 different areas of the presentation of the order of service, you can click on body and change that character from Times New Roman and its size. Right here, there's like an arrow where you can enlarge the font or decrease the font size. You can also add, the standard word processing options, bold, italics, underline. You can also change the color of the font if you wanted, if you had a color printer, but by default that's black. On the right side as well, and by the way, that's for each option here. If I go to heading, then heading by default uses trebuchet, and you can change that font. If we go to caption, that's trebuchet as well. Subcaption is Times New Roman, and rubrics, Times New Roman, copyright, Verdana. So it's using by default, I guess what is kind of done in the Lutheran Service book are those different font selections for those 6 areas of the order of service, and you can customize each one of those if you would like, and increase the size of the font if you would like. Underneath that is a section for paragraphs. You can left align, center align, or justify, right justify. Let's click on center. That gives you, that's for the copyright. Let's put that back on left. Let's go back to body here. Click on center align. And so now you see all of the body parts are center aligned. You'd have to go through each of these sections and change the where you want to align the information. You might go to the right here for the body, that puts everything justified to the right. And then for this last option, justify, for paragraphs shown as such, sometimes you've got a edge where, depending on where the words end, it could be a little bit staggered. So what justify will do is block this paragraph so it's all nice and neat. Let's go ahead and click justify. And you may have seen, maybe not, that we was changed a little bit. And so now there's a nice straight line here for the paragraphs. And that's what justify will do. I'll go back just to left alignment. Here on these options, just hover over the button. It will tell you what it is: a space before a paragraph. If you want to heighten that space, underneath that is a space after the paragraph. Over on the right is left indent if you want to increase that indent, or on underneath that a right indent. And then here is an option for line spacing. If I were to, it's right now it's set at 1.0. If I increased it, you can see that there's much more space between each and every line. So if you wanted to increase that, we're just going to go back to 1.0. And after all those changes, I've got a white dot, so I might want to click save in the lower right corner to save any changes that I make. Let's see, let's go to layout next. So layout tab at the top will allow you then to change the page size. So right now it's 8.5 by 11 portrait. Many of you might do a letter size 8.5 by 14. You then turn it landscape, and then you fold it. And so making those changes here under layout will then allow you to create a folded bulletin. When you export it to Word, Word will know that these options have been set, and it should print it in book fold mode. If you're having trouble with that, sometimes certain printers can kind of give you a little bit of grief. You can always give us a call and we'll try to help you with that. But that will change it to a book fold landscape type of layout. Underneath that, you have options for margins. They're all set at 0.5 inches. And then here, let's see, is an option for music. Let me make one change under content just to help us with music. Let me go back to layout. All right, so what we see here with when music is displayed, we've got the end of the music being right here on the screen. Depending on what type of page size and layout you have, let's actually go back to 8.5 by 11 portrait, not folded. So you can see here, there's a lot of space left open here, and sometimes folks will say the music is pretty small lettering, and is there any way to enlarge it? Well, you can do that with the automatic scaling here. If you put a check mark in the box, what it will do is it will expand the hymn where it normally uses that kind of size, and it will expand it to the width of the paper, what's allowed for the width of the paper, allowing you to get as large as you can because it automatically scales that music. So let's watch. I'm going to put a check mark here and watch how the size of the music staff changes. So here we go with the click, and then that enlarged the music quite a bit here. And so that would be something you might consider. If you uncheck it, automatically scale, then you've got the fixed scale that you can manually manipulate by increasing the number to the size you want. But automatically you will always use the width of the paper. And then let's go to content here at the far end, content. Now this is where you can set a lot of your global settings so you don't have to do those individual changes in the order of service like we did earlier. So for example here, by default, all headings are visible. If you don't need any of the headings, like confession and absolution and those headings that are similar in size to that throughout the order of service, just uncheck the box, and those headings then disappear across the board, so that whenever you use this new format you're creating, it will never include the headings. I'll keep it in there. If your church just doesn't use rubrics, which I've seen a lot of churches that don't, then just come here to the bulletin format that you're using, undo the checkbox, and all of the rubrics are removed. Then we have a section under content here for hymns. Do you want your hymns visible? Yes, we do. Do you want the content to be text or if melody, just by default? That way you don't have to select the melody on each hymn. Or do you just not want hymn to be shown at all, just a title? Then you can make that change here. I'll click on melody and we'll keep that. The next option here for hymns is to show the caption. Do you want it to show by default? You want it to show the caption always, or just never have a caption? And again, the caption is referring to that there, if you want that visible at all times, and we'll go with the default. The caption format, we've got 3 of them. This is the name right now that is selected by default. Role, I'm going to click on that, and so watch how this changes here in a moment. When we go to role, now it says hymn of invocation, so that's the role instead of the hymn number and the hymn name. Or you can have both, the role and the name. So selecting that now gives you the role, hymn of invocation, and then the number and the name. We'll go back just to name. The subcaption is referring to what you want here in this area. Now we've got 4 options here that you can refer to. Pound, STS pound means show the stanzas. Now I do have a slide here I'd like to show real quick that gives us the 4 options. So pound hashtag or hashtag PG hashtag is going to show page number. What's currently on our hymn is this one, pound STS pound selected stanzas. You can also use package there in between pound signs for the name of the selected account, or if you're in a scripture reading and by default, most of our order of service already had pound reference pound, and that will then show the related scripture. So let's go back to our and so if I would change the sub caption to, let's say, pound ref pound, and save that. There's nothing there for the hymn in this case, but that's how you would change that up. We could put pound page pound and then a space and then pound STS pound. So what I'm referring to here from those codes is I want the page number and the stanzas. Now I'll click away, and so that's what we get then for our subcaption, the page number as well as the stanzas. That was supposed to be an arrow. And so you've got those options there. And then do you want to show the stanza numbers? And that's referring to those, although let's see, I think that might apply mainly to the text. Let's put text here instead. All right, so yeah, showing stanza numbers, there it is, 1 and 2. Unchecking the box removes those, and they're no longer there. And then omit the number from the caption. This is talking about the number right here. If you want to omit that and just have the name of the hymn, and you can put a check mark there. Let's scroll down a little bit farther. The liturgy then is a section all of its own. Whether the liturgy is visible or not, whether you want text, melody, or setting, or none, here in the end. Show the captions. We've talked about that from hymns above. The subcaption at the moment, by default, has pound PG pound to show the page number, and that's what we're seeing here in this case for subcaption, LSB 186. Use symbols for speakers. That's talking about these symbols, P and C, pastor, congregation. If you do not want to use the symbols, you can uncheck that and it will replace it then with the words pastor and congregation. So I don't see that used very much, but it's possible. And then emphasize decision fields. Right now that's checked. And what's that's talking about is if you have a baptism, emphasize a decision field means like in holy baptism, John was clothed with the robe. And so it puts an underline underneath the name, drawing emphasis to that field so pastor will know that that's there. If we uncheck that decision field, it just basically removes the underline from the little notation there. And then finally, here at the end of the bulletin format, we've got the propers. Do we want those visible or not? If it does contain music that is sung, do we want just text, melody, or setting, or none? Do we want the captions to show all the time, or none at all? What do we want in the subcaption? In this case, the scripture reference for propers, and that's what we're seeing right there, Romans 10:8b. If we remove that pound, ref pound, it would not display Romans there in the subcaption. Here's that setting I talked about earlier. If you just don't want Chan pointing at all from those elements that have Chan capability, you can remove it here, and then you won't have to do it within the order of service. So it's a global setting for that. Here is the global setting for scripture verse numbers. So in the scripture here, do we have a scripture reading? There it is. So it would show the verse numbers there with the checkbox checked, and you can remove those from all elements of the service just by removing the check mark. Show headings. What that is referring to is if there is a heading in the scripture, the ESV version, I'll click on the box to include it. And then we have headings like this, the Sermon of the Mount, and then verse 2 shows the Beatitudes. So it will include those scripture headings if you check that box. And finally, show words of Christ in red. You can check that, and it will include then the words of Christ in red. If you have a color printer, it would then print it in red. We can go ahead and save here, and then Tim's webinar format has now been created in a custom way. And if I wanted to use that from this point forward, after I've customized, I started with default, made some decisions on what I wanted, I can then drag this format to the top of my list and then drop it here at the top, which will then, let's close out of here. When we go to the document and we choose bulletin formats, let's see, I might have to refresh my browser page here so it picks up that change of the format. All right, so I might have done something in the incorrect order, but it should be moving Tim's webinar format to the top of the drop-down list here as the one that I want to use. And so it will put it right there in that first position. It should do that. If it doesn't, after the webinar, I'll let the programming team know. All right, so let's see. Let's go ahead now and click export one more time, Microsoft Word. I'll wait for our new order of service based on the changes that I made, and then the bulletin format, although I didn't select Tim's webinar format. But selecting that format then would show us, it's going to show up on one of my screens, left or right side. Here we go. And there is the exported format of the service. All right, and then we can print that off and distribute it. All right, so that is it for the content. I went 15 minutes over. I apologize. But I think all of that is important. Oh, I should point out while I'm seeing this on the screen, since we made some changes to the formatting, there is a little red dot that appears on the corner of the web view. And so that just means that there have been some changes made. So if I'm using the web view for like the QR code idea, or to stick that URL on our church's website so people can grab that order of service right there from their home computers or their phones, you'll have to click on the web view button and update. You know, the red dot means that an update needs to be made since we made changes to the way this service looks. So I'll click on the blue button, the red dot disappears, and I would then need to recopy this string, this URL string, because the code numbers here on the end change when you've made a change. So then I'd have to go back to my free QR code generator and replace that and get a new code there on the right. All right, that is it. Let's go ahead back to our slides. There were those 4 different codings for the subcaption, if you would like. But ways of reaching out to us for software support, you can go to our online help center, which is available in the little circle with the eye in the lower right corner of the application. That will take you or give you the opportunity to search our help center for an article on a search term, and then you'd see the help center there. We have in-app chat, which is also available from the information center icon in the lower right, and that's available Monday through Friday, 7:30 to 5. And you have a real technician in the chat. It's not a chat bot. You can also call us at the number shown there on the screen, 1-800-346-6120, 7:30 to 5, Monday through Friday. And outside of those hours, if you need help in the evenings or on weekends, you'll need to email us, and then we'll respond back to you the next business day. So that's our email address there at the bottom. All right, so there's still more training coming up this week. We have done service planning and global search, and today we covered bulletins, bulletin formats. Tomorrow we'll be focused on presentation, PowerPoints, and PowerPoint formats. And then Thursday is on custom resources, My Worship resources, and other add-ons. All right, I'm going to take a look at some of the questions that were done. You know, you don't have to hang around for this if you don't. If you need to get going, I'll mention any questions that might be good for everyone to know. There is just a lot of smaller comments here. I'll take a look at it in a moment. You can still ask questions, and we can always follow up with you. You can just enter them into the question interface there in the GoToWebinar chat. Remember, recording of this will be emailed soon. I'm not sure if it's within that 48 hours or not, but we'll get it out to you, don't worry. And then if you are watching this recording at a later date, please send your questions to support@cts.cph.org, and we'll be glad to look at those. All right, let me just glance over some of these questions here. Just a lot of folks. Let's see, well, let's go back to the top. That would be good to start there. Yeah, the link to the webinar. Yeah, some technical issues. We don't need to cover that. Yeah, there's a question by Steve where he asked, is there a way to save the changed rubric so it regularly appears? Let's see, can I click on that? Let's see, yeah, as changed text from stand to please stand. Yes, there is, Steve. Let's bring that up here. All right, so we've got our service plan. Steve is talking about, I hope he's still on. Steve is talking about, didn't I have a please stand? Oh, I took the rubrics out. Let's go back to bulletin formats from the gear. I'm going to do some of this kind of fast here. And we're going to go to content, and I'm going to put those rubrics back in. Save. And then exit, and then in our order of service, we do have stand. So Steve is talking about coming here to a rubric on screen and entering in, please stand. And let's see, can I do this? This is kind of going into some of what we cover, although I don't really do this example here on Thursday with custom options. But let me just cover this real quick. You can kind of follow along. You can replay the video. We're going to go to the gear, go to My Worship Resources. The liturgy that we saved earlier is going to show up as a custom liturgy under My Liturgies. The one I saved today with our modifications was this one, if you recall, and I'd be able to use this order of service going forward. We can click on Zion's DS3 modified, and what this will bring up is a view of the order of service, more of an outline. And what you'll see here is the actual rubrics, and you could go to each one of these rubrics and change it. You can see the ones that I changed already show please stand, but I could go through here, click on kneel stand, and put please in front of it, and then click save in the lower right corner after making those changes. And then from this point forward, please kneel stand would show up in the order of service as you had asked. So that would be the way to do it. That's kind of what a little taste of what we're covering on Thursday under custom options. Let's see here. Yeah, some more technical issues of blinking. Sorry about that. Okay, another person asked about saving those rubrics, so we just covered that. Yeah, the gradual, someone asked about, Matt asked about the gradual, why it doesn't include, let's see, does not include the psalm. I'd have to look into that one. I'm not real up on, what's being presented is what is in the Lutheran Service Book kind of by default. So we're kind of presenting you with that default information, and then you'd be able to modify it as needed. So I'm going to let that one go. I know it's been answered. Some more, whoops, let me get back to my questions here. It looks like most all of these were answered by Rod. I don't want to keep you hanging on. Yeah, you can delete saved order of services. Actually, we were just kind of there. You're seeing on the screen. We'll go to My Worship Resources. I just talked about how you go to My Liturgies. I could select that one order of service I created today, and then simply click remove this liturgy. And so you can play around with an order of service, create it, and then delete it or remove it, and it's gone. All right, Matt asked about the Let Us Pray. I would say just review the video on that one if you don't mind. We've talked about that yesterday and went through it today. If you don't see account settings, if you don't see account settings here in your signed in version, then that means that you are a user of your church account. You would need to go to the owner administrator, that might be a pastor, it might be some other administrative staff. If you don't know who it is, you can call in and we can find out the email address that is considered owner admin, and then you'd have access to account settings. So that's the one permission that's not allowed if you're a standard user. Good question. A couple of questions here at the end. All right, Linda asks, if a pastor and secretary want to use Lutheran Service Builder together, must the pastor sign in with the same password as the secretary? No, you don't. What you can do is, I've got the menu up here in the upper right corner. If you're the owner admin, go to account settings, and then you would come down here to the invitation. We covered this yesterday. You can review that video, and invite a pastor, invite a secretary, invite an organist, and then you would end up with a list of 4 or 5 other users, and you can all sign in under your own user and email address, and you can collaborate together. You'd all see the same information, and so that way you're all using it with your own sign-in. So very good. Let's see. Stephanie asked about fonts in PowerPoint. That kind of question, I would have to research a little bit more, and that would be good for a support call. That I can't answer off the top of my head. It kind of could be a variety of things. So go ahead and give our team a call. I don't know if you've done that yet, but that's what I would suggest, because that one is a puzzle. Steve asked if Service Builder will be adding a Spanish module in the future for use with bilingual parishioners. That we just take feedback on right now. It's not in the works that I'm aware of, but we do take feedback on that, and that if enough people are requesting that option, we may just see that appear down the road as well. And then the question, can you delete multiple liturgies at the same time? Let's go back, because I know that some people create a lot of liturgies almost weekly, which is not really what you want to do. But if we go back to My Worship Resources, My Liturgies, do I have a couple here? Yeah, let's just go ahead and click on that one. Can I select 2? No. You can only select 1 at a time. And let's go to this one here. I can remove that one. And then you'll have to delete those 1 at a time. All right. That rounds out the questions. Let's go ahead back to the slide presentation. And I just want to thank you for watching today. I know we went quite a bit over with the questions, an extra 15 minutes there. And I so much appreciate your time and for watching. If you're watching at a later date, we have more to come, a couple more sessions, and so I look forward to seeing some of you then tomorrow and the day after to wrap up the series. Thanks for watching.